All right, today we're doing something a little different. We are going to be cultural detectives.
I mean, think about it. What does a country really want its kids to know? What values are they trying to pass on? Well, it turns out the blueprint for all of that might be hiding in a place you'd never expect. So this is what we're looking at. It's a real social studies exam for 10th graders in India. And just to be clear, we're not going to be grading it. We don't care about the right answers. What we do care about are the questions themselves, because that's where you find the story of a nation's priorities, its history, its whole identity. So you ready? Let's dive in.
And right off the bat, you see exactly where the story starts. It's not with ancient kings or far-off dynasties. Nope. It kicks off with a fight for freedom.
And boom, there it is. The very first question asks about the Bharat Chodo movement, which translates to the Quit India movement. And you know, its placement as question number 1, that's not an accident. That tells you everything. It's basically saying, hey, if you want to understand modern India, this fight for independence, that's where you start. And it's not just that one moment either. The exam really weaves together this whole timeline of the struggle. You've got the civil disobedience movement, the founding of the Depressed Classes Association, which is super important because it brings social justice right into the heart of the fight. And then, of course, the Quit India movement. It's like they're building this narrative block by block, a story of both defiance and inclusion.
So you can see it's not just about memorizing dates. I mean, look at this. One question asks for a whole essay on liberal nationalism. Students aren't just learning what happened, they have to understand the ideas behind it all. These are the very ideologies that fueled the entire movement and later became the foundation of the Constitution. So this struggle for freedom, it's the direct prequel to building the modern state.
Okay, so once that foundation of the freedom struggle is set, the exam makes a pivot. It moves into the nuts and bolts of, well, how do you actually run the world's largest democracy?
1/3. Just that number. What's it for? Well, it's the answer to a really important question on this test. How many seats are reserved for women in local government bodies? And that number, it's a huge deal.
Because this isn't just some random statistic to memorize, right? It's teaching a core principle, democratic inclusion. It's a real, concrete policy that shows a national commitment to getting women involved in politics, starting right at the local, grassroots level.
And check this out. The test asks students to define a coalition government. Now, for a country as incredibly diverse as India, with tons of different political parties, knowing how to share power isn't just some abstract idea from a textbook. It's the reality of how politics actually works there.
And you can see it just keeps going, methodically building this picture of civic life. It's asking the big questions. What even is democracy? What's the role of a ruling party? What does it mean to be a secular state? As students answer these, they're basically putting together a puzzle, the whole machine of their government. So we've covered the politics. Now let's shift gears and look at the physical country, the land itself. How does this test teach students to think about India's resources and its challenges?
Okay, so one of the big ideas here is the difference between renewable and non-renewable resources. But they don't keep it abstract. For example, a question asks students to classify iron ore. That's a huge resource for India's industry. So right away, this big concept is tied to something real and important to the country.
And that focus on practical stuff just keeps coming. This isn't just memorizing definitions, it's straight up applied geography. Students have to actually get out a map and pinpoint where the major coal fields are, where the big steel plants are. They're literally connecting the dots between a resource in the ground and the country's economic engine.
But here's the thing. It's not all about digging stuff up and building things. The curriculum strikes a balance. One question asks about the year Project Tiger was launched, a famous conservation program. The message there is pretty clear, right? Managing your country's resources isn't just about using them, it's also about protecting them.
All right, for our final piece of the puzzle, let's look at the economy. What's the story being told here? Because this part really shows a country that's dealing with its history while trying to figure out its place in a super fast-paced, globalized world.
So there's this one question. Seems simple on the surface. It just asks, what's the largest producing sector in India? Is it agriculture, industry, or services? The answer to that one little question tells you so much about a huge economic shift.
And the answer is the service sector. Now think about that. For a country that for centuries was defined by farming and agriculture, teaching your kids that the service industry is now #1, that is a massive statement about what modern India actually is.
And the test doesn't pull any punches. It gets into some pretty complex stuff. Students have to write an essay about how globalization impacts regular people.
So they can't just spit back facts. They have to actually think critically about these huge economic forces and what they mean for everyday life.
And it gets practical, too, like really practical. One question is about the difference between getting a loan from a bank versus borrowing from a local money lender. I mean, for millions of people, that's not just a test question. That's incredibly important, real-world knowledge.
Okay, so we've taken this whole exam apart. After looking at all these questions, what's the big picture? What is the actual blueprint that's being laid out for the next generation?
Well, it seems like the blueprint is for a citizen who, first, is really grounded in the story of their country's independence. Second, they get the complicated details of their democratic government. Third, they know about the nation's land and its resources, the good and the bad. And finally, they're ready to deal with a modern, global economy.
Which kind of makes you wonder, right? What if we did this with the tests you took when you were a kid? Put them under the same microscope.
What story would they tell about your country? What would be the most important event? What values would jump off the page? And what kind of person, what kind of citizen were you being shaped to become? Yeah, that's definitely something to think about.